This is all corrected here. It's a little bit better than the previous version. Not yet finished, but
I have the papers, but I'm not in order with them.
yeah, in the end I'll probably print the whole thing out.
You have this on one side?
But this is just
No, I just have to sit with you for a second. Did you do this? I mean, did you set this up, or is how it was set up when you printed it?
no, this is
Oh, so you set it up with, okay, I got you.
okay, so today is the 15th day of Kislev, the 16th of December. And we're finishing the Ramak today, the explanation of the Ramak, hopefully, because he sends us somewhere. He decides that we have to go see something more than what we've seen so far. Okay. So what did we see yesterday? That there's this concept of compassion. Now he's saying in general that Hashem has compassion. And why is he talking about compassion? Because, I didn't say this yesterday, but because Yaakov is compassion. Yaakov is Rachmim. Right? Yaakov is Tiferes, and Tiferes, the Pnimius, is compassion. So whenever you talk about Zah, the main aspect of Zah becoming mature, of Yaakov becoming mature, is that he has compassion. How does a person have compassion? So one of the things that we know is that when you have children, that's how you get compassion. Why? Because children are going to not do what you want anyway, and then right, they're going to misbehave, and part of your maturing as a parent is having compassion on them, even though they don't behave properly. So it's the whole process of Yaakov maturing is all with his relationship with his children. So we saw in last week's parsha that he gets angry at Shimon and Levi. They're not children anymore; they're 13, but still, he gets angry at them. And in this week's parsha, he gets angry at Yosef. He says to Yosef, why are you telling people your dreams? What good is going to come out of this? And so on. And then he makes the mistake of having more compassion on Yosef than he has on the other children. And then that causes jealousy and problems. So these parshot, they're all about the maturation of Zah. They're all about how Zah matures. And Yaakov's big deal is that he has the children, he has Shvatim, he has Mitato Shlema, his bed is complete. That everything about him is his children, everything about him manifests through his children.
Why is it more compassionate, let's say, compassion for his wives?
Because they're not small, meaning that when you get angry at someone older, it's a different issue. The whole point is to make it easier on you. That since it's your child and you love them naturally, with a wife it's not natural love. We don't call it natural love. With children it is. With a wife it's what we call, it's all intellectual. So for a person, yeah, you have vested interest in it.
Of compassion to oneself as one grows normally.
To a certain extent, towards one's animal soul, yeah.
Ah, very good.
Yeah, not towards oneself. That I have a child inside of me. I have an animal soul.
It's like it's sort of external. It's from that.
Right. I have to. If I'm looking at it as I have issues inside of me, and this is my animal soul. So yes, I need to have compassion.
But, unless someone's a real tzaddik, he is his animal soul.
Right. and still, the whole point of so what we're saying here is that without Torah, you can't come to compassion really. The compassion that people have, the natural compassion, only lasts as much as they have natural inclination towards their children. But when the children surpass that, meaning they do things that the natural inclination can't have compassion over, so it's finished. So then there has to be the understanding, that's what Torah gives you, the understanding that you're raising a person. That this is a soul who's separate from you, and you are entrusted with its development. And so from that's the mindset of loving kindness that comes from the Torah, and then that's supposed to work. But it only works as far as the heart. That's what we saw. And then when you get down to the Netzach, so then that's where the big question becomes. Are you able to, with determination, continue to have compassion? So anyway, he sent us before to what we say every day before Shema, Avinu Ava Rachaman. And Avinu Ava Rachaman in this case is like Yaakov himself. He's the patriarch who's the compassionate patriarch, because again, he's Tiferet, the Pnimius, the motivation, the intellectual motivation of beauty, of Tiferet, of bringing everything together is compassion. And then he adds, and so we saw that there's that you have to have a tolerance, you have to have patience all the way down to the Netzach, but it's very hard there. So, in a certain sense, what we have is that Yaakov is vulnerable there. That's his vulnerability. If he was something else, maybe his vulnerability, we wouldn't call it Netzach, maybe we would call it something else. Maybe. I'm saying, because he said it's a principle in every single Sphirah that the vulnerability starts in the Netzach. Because until there we have the motivation and the mindset that's concealing and providing something of an armor around you, so that it doesn't dissipate, so that your feelings don't disappear. And so, yeah. Okay, so this concept is further explained, he says elsewhere, concerning the forehead plate worn by the high priest. Now, from the high priest we learn a lot about the different qualities and attributes of the soul. And there's a long Gemara about this. There's a passage in Talmud in Mizvachim that describes how each of the garments, 8 garments of the high priest, it rectifies one of the different attributes of the soul. So we won't get into it there, but clearly here he's going to be talking about the forehead plate. So the forehead plate was like a plate of gold. It wasn't a plate; it was soft. It was like something that curled around, warped around the forehead, and was then tied in the back with blue strings. So what does this symbolize? So the question is, what does the forehead symbolize? If you understand what the forehead symbolizes, then you know what the plate rectifies. Okay? So he says its function was to sweeten the judgments emanating from the forehead of Zer Anpin. Okay, so the forehead is the part of the skull that's before forehead, it's before the mind, right? Right, the mind is inside.
Yeah.
Now today we even say that that's the frontal lobe. It really is the mind. It's really where the consciousness is. So, okay, but it doesn't matter, even without that. So we have the brain behind it, the mind behind it. So what is the forehead? So he says that there's judgments that emanate from the forehead. Why? Because the forehead represents the resolve of the will that remains after the withdrawal of the intellect. כמו שנדבר במקום אחר בעניין הציץ של כהן גדול, שפעולתו להמתיק הדינין הבאים ממצחא דזה, שהוא בחינת הסכם הרצון, הנשאר אחר הסתלקות המוחין. So what's going on? So he says that when a person decides something, he learned in the Torah, he learned this is how I'm supposed to act. And he understands the rationale behind it, and he decides this is what I'm going to do. So the rationale begins to affect him, and it goes down to his heart, but after a while, he doesn't remember. He doesn't remember what the rationale was. A lot of things we don't remember. We just know that we decided at some point I'm not going to do this and that. Like for many years, I had this decision that I made because I learned that this was from experience. It wasn't from the Torah, but the same idea that I'm not very good at confrontations. I always heat up too much, or I back down too much. I can't do it right. I think a lot of people feel that way. So I decided a long time ago I'm not going to confront. Whenever there's confrontation, I don't want to get into it. I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to get into it. I'm just going to completely drop it. I'm not going to confront anyone. But then sometimes I forget, and I confront anyway. And then I remember why I decided a long time ago that I'm not good at confrontations. I shouldn't do it. All kinds of things like this. So you learn something and you have it in your mind. You understand the rationale, but then after a while, the rationale leaves, and what do you have left? You have Heskem Ratzon, he calls it. He says the decision to act this way, the willful decision to act a certain way, but you don't remember what the rationale was. Yeah, it's gone. All you have is that this is how I conduct myself. This is how I carry myself. That's all that's left. So when that is the situation, that's called the forehead. Meaning it's not the mind behind. The mind behind it is like the rationale. It's what I learned, it's what I decided. But the forehead, and that's how we understand it also, the metzach nechusha it's called. Metzach nechusha is like a person has nechishut, he has perseverance, he has like nechishut. It comes from the word copper, actually. Determination. Yeah. Nechishut is from nechoshet. So it's very much, if you translate it as determination, it's very much related to netzach. We see that it's related to netzach. And netzach is also, in a certain sense, nechishut, right? Because it's like what's left after
this. Is normally hold, right? The scam, what you said before, is usually the hold.
Right, okay. You were in those classes, you remember that. Okay, schema dat, it's called. Right, so when you have a schem, schum, the reason you put it there is schum, because hod is always related to quantitative. So he says a schem is from a schum. So it's like the final tally, the final judgment on everything. So that's what I decided, that this is the way that I'm going to act. So he says that so you have all, that's all that's left now, which is just determination, or it's abstinence, really. Nechishut is like abstinence. A person is abstinent, he won't move, he won't budge. So you have to rectify that. How do you rectify it? He puts the forehead plate on it, which is, again, we said a plate made out of gold. And the gold, what is the gold? The gold is like you can call it like a conductor. Like it conducts electricity. In the same way that it's a very good conductor of electricity, it's a good conductor of what's inside the mind, bringing it out. Then nonetheless, even though you're only obstinate and you seem to be just stubborn, something is still there. Something is coming out. And the words that you put on it, Kodesh LaHashem. This is holy to God. This is sanctified to God. Meaning that the reason that I'm acting this way is to remember that if I decided to act this way, it was because I came to the conclusion that this is the way I need to serve Hashem. It's Kodesh LaHashem, so you understand, it's Kodesh, it's very holy to me. I won't change it. But it's all because it's for Hashem. The forehead represents a resolve of the will that remains after the withdrawal of the intellect, the moichin, which causes a severe arousal of judgment against those who violate his will. And because of that, because he's so obstinate, so if I've decided to act a certain way and you hinder me in some way, so I'll be very much against you. That's the metzach nechusha. As is stated in the Idra Rabbah, here it says 24 courts of judgment. I think in the origin it says 400 courts of judgment, arbamot batei dinim, meaning 400 aspects of judgment, of harsh judgment, are aroused from the forehead of Zeir Anpin, etc. See there for further details. This is the meaning of the verse. So now we come to the punchline. He saw that he could not prevail against him. So this man that was battling Jacob, he saw that he could not prevail against him. Now the word him in Hebrew is lo. Okay. Lo, what does it mean? Lo is his essence. Like when we say, when you give tzedakah, there's 3 levels. So, Dei machsoro asher yachsar lo, says the Gemara, I think it's the Baba Mitzia. Dei machsoro asher yachsar lo, the 3 levels of tzedakah. Dei machsoro is whatever he lacks. You need to give tzedakah for a person who doesn't have what to eat, doesn't have what to, okay. Asher yachsar, even if he needs a servant to run in front of him, it says. Why? Because he used to be a rich man and now he's lost that, and he doesn't feel human without that. You see all these comforts, you say, well, I have to give tzedakah for this. But then it says the highest level, asher yachsar lo, that is missing for him. What is the him? He says, la'asio isha, to marry him a woman, to find him someone to marry. He says that's the greatest tzedakah you can give to someone. Why? because that's the essence of the person. To bond again with his spouse, that is his essence. That's called lo. So the same thing. It says, what does it say? In the beginning of Adam and Eve, Ezer kenegdo, Eseh lo ezer kenegdo. I will make for him. So the law, it says, that's the highest level of the connection between a man and a woman, that they're essentially connected.
Even though it's kenegdo.
Right. And if they're not, then Ezer, then she's just a helper, and then the lowest level is kenegdo, she's against him. But the highest level is that they're like one person entirely. It's his essence. His essence comes out in his wife. So he says he tried to hit him in his essence.
He tried to, sorry.
The angel, this man who was fighting with the Yaakov, he tried to hit him in his lo. Vayar ki lo yachol lo. He couldn't get into the him, into his essence. So what did he do? Vayiga bekaf yerecho. So his solution was that I'll hit his thigh. Yeah. Why the thigh? Because like we said, the essence is up in the mind. Okay, because that's the only place that's vulnerable. Yeah. That's the place that's vulnerable. Shesham pa'al pu'ulat adin kanan. So what was the din here? Why is there a din here? Because he's trying to come against him with some accusation. He says, "Look at what Yaakov's doing. He's not acting properly. He didn't. He was there for 20 years. He shouldn't have been there for so long. He only was sent to marry his wives. Why did he stay there for another 14 years? He should have been with his parents, giving them kavod, honoring his parents. He was outside of the land of Israel. He wasn't learning the whole time. He wasn't this. He wasn't this. He has all these accusations against him." Now, Yaakov, how did Yaakov persevere there? Because he was determined. Determined to what? Because his parents sent him, and he was determined to build himself there, even if the price was very, very high. Okay, but what are you left with? You're left with your compassion, which is only in your forehead, but down below it's gone. You don't see it anymore. Your essence is like gone there. So in his higher parts, he couldn't hurt him. But when it comes to the thigh, where it's just what's left as, this is what I do, it's my determination, that this is how I act, and so forth, there he could hurt him. And then we understand better why he ran after these small vessels, because the whole point of going to Haran was to build himself. So what, he's going to come back without his vessels? These vessels are part of it's determination. It's like, did you really think it through? Probably not. It's not completely thought through. But the point is, I went there and I'm going to come with everything back to Eretz Yisrael.
Not leaving anything
right.
behind, yeah.
So tomorrow what I want to do is look at where he sends us to. He sends us to a mimer from his father to understand the tzitz, the foreplate, a little bit better. The Mittler Rebbe's, the Tzemach Tzedek sends us to his grandfather, to the Alter Rebbe.